So this week we are going to learn about the permissions. So we revoke the permissions user. How do you expire a user? How do you change the password? All these different things. Now, do we know how we create the user? It's very common, right? I think we have done it previously. So we just say create user. The way we say create table, we'll start using create user. So let's create a user without giving any permissions to that user. So here, I'm going to open up two sessions. So to create a user, I will say create user M1 identified by ABC123.
We're going to do the same thing? Or?
No, I think you can create whatever the username that you want. So here I'm just going to create a user. Right now if I look into which user I'm currently logged in as, I'm logged in as this user. So I'm going to set my Oracle environment bash 36, and here if I say SQL plus M1 ABC123, it should deny that to me because the user is not yet created. So what I will do is I will say, okay, I'm going to create a user. The user is created. At this time I'm going to re-execute the same thing. What is the very first thing that the error is suggesting? Use an empty shell. Okay, so every time you are creating a user in Oracle term, you are creating a new schema. A new schema is assigned an empty shell. What that means is, depending on the kind of permission, the user may or may not be allowed to write into that. So if this is my database, and if I need to connect here, depending on the permissions, it will allow me to connect or it will deny me to connect. At this point, the only thing that it is looking here is it says the user 1 or the M1 is created. So the user is there, but the user lacks create session permission. So here what we are saying is, in order for the user to get in from here to here, that user needs create session permission. So every time you are creating a user, you actually want to grant create session to the user. So as a DBA, I'm going to grant create session to the user, and then we'll try this one more time. Grant create session to M1. So here, as a DBA, I'm going to do that. And then this time I'm going to try connecting it one more time. And it has allowed me to establish the connection. If I want to remove this permission from M1 user, how can I actually do that? Instead of grant, we will say revoke. Revoke create session from M1. Now I'm going to try this one more time. And then if I try logging in again, it says the user will not be able to create a session anymore. Okay. Now, to drop a user, we'll say drop user, username, and then we'll say cascade. Now there are two ways you can do that. One is drop user, username, or drop user, username, cascade. So I can usually what we want to, if you want to remove the complete user along its permission that it has given to some other users, if you want to revoke all those permissions, then the better option is drop user, username, cascade. So anything that is related to it, everything will be gone. Now I'm going to drop this user. And then if I try to connect back to the user, it says the username or the password is incorrect. So I'm going to try creating the user one more time now. This time I'll say, okay, create user, username, and then grant create session to this user. Now if I try log back in again, I should be able to log in. Now can I say these are some of the commands that will allow me to create a user, grant at least one permission. This is the command that will help me revoke the permission, whatever the permission that I have given. So far the permission that we have seen is can I say create anything that starts with create? Anything that starts with create is a system level permission. We'll talk more in details in a few minutes. But the create table, create user, create session, create view, create role, create trigger, all these are the system level permission. In other words, how do you define the system level permissions? System level permissions are the permissions that are already predefined by Oracle. So when you install the Oracle database, these permissions already come along with the system. So no matter how many databases that you create, every database has a system level permission, not just one, but set of those. So set of those, one of the very first thing that I can think of is that I have already seen is create session. Create session by itself is one permission, one system level permission. Okay. Now what I want to do now is I want to see how many different system level permissions are there. Well, let's take a look at it. Using that user, if I type in show user here, I logged in as M1, so I want to create a new table now. Create, so here I'll say SQL plus M1 ABC. So I will say SQL plus, and then show user. This should give me, at this point I'll say create table T1 ID number. That's it. I just want to create a new table or T1, and with this user, guess what? We have created the user, we have granted the permission to connect to that user, but as a DBA, I have not granted the permission to the user to create any object inside it. So when the user is trying to create a table, it has not granted the permission. So in that case, do you think I have to go back and I say grant create table to M1 now? So here we will say so as sysdba, I will have to grant this. Now if I try creating this table, show user M1 create Y permission.
You have to do create table, create session.
No, we are already connected, right?
Yeah, but you just ran the create session for a day.
Did you log in as DBA?
Oh, create session. Oh, that's fine. So create table T1. No, wait. So, you mean here? Create table. Okay, so let's say create table to M1, and then we'll try to create the table again, and then the table is being created. Now, how do you revoke the permission of creating table? Let's say I don't want the M1 to create any tables. How can I do that?
Create table from a.
The way we have granted, the same way we will say revoke.
Create table from M1, right?
Revoke create table from M1. So I'm going to try this now again. And then we'll try to create a new table called T2. We'll try this again. Sufficient permissions. So now I will say grant create table to M1 again, and then we re-execute the same thing, and it should allow me to create a table. Okay. So the next one that we have seen is there is one permission, and then I have create table. Similarly, we have create trigger, create index, create type. These are mostly the developers create procedure. Create cluster. More than I'm missing. This group in Oracle technology for resource to M1. What this resource has? This resource has create table, create trigger, create index, create type, create procedure, create cluster, and then create some XYZ. So anyone who has, any user who has this role, so instead of grouping, instead of maintaining one permission at a time, what we are doing is, what Oracle has done is, Oracle said I'm going to combine 7 or 8 create session or create permissions together, and I'm going to group them together, and we are going to call it a role. What role? A role is given which is called resource. So all I have to do is I have the option now. I can say, after I create the user, I can say grant create session to M1. So one permission is given, or create table. Then grant create this to M1, grant this to M1. So you have to do this 6 or 7 times. Instead of that, can I not simply say grant resource to M1? What this resource is bringing? It is bringing about 7 or 8 permissions together. Now if I want to revoke this permission, I will say revoke resource from M1. All these permissions which it came with, all those permissions will be revoked. That's the operator.
Do we have sequence too?
No, not part of the resource. Okay. So here,
Did you say create view is part of it?
no, it is not part of it. It is not part of the resource. You will have to grant it separately. Okay. Now we'll talk more in details about the roles and then the individual permissions, like the system level permission. There are certain object level permissions. But before I do that, it is very common for a user to lock the account. Well, first of all, how can you find out if there are users whose account is locked or expired? What is the difference between the locked versus the expired? How can I get more information? Now, do you remember we have the dictionary, Oracle dictionary? If I want to find out about all the tables, I will use a dictionary called DBA_tables. Do you all agree? We can describe DESC and then DB_tables, and we can pick whatever the columns that we want. That means the owner, who is the owner, what is the table name, how many rows, all this information about the tables. So information about tables, any table in the database. You will query, you will say describe DB_tables, and then build your SQL. If you want to get the information about the table. Now if I want to get the information about the constraints, information about constraints, which one I will pick now? DB_constraints. And then you build your SQL. If I want to find out about views, can I say DB_views? If I want to get the information about triggers, can I say DB_triggers?
What is a trigger?
Trigger is a PLSQL term. Let's not get into that. It's more on the development side. Okay. So any information, let's say if I want to get the information about the users, how many users are there? Which Oracle dictionary do you think I will be using? So if you want the information about users, can I say DBA_users? Now when I say users, I want to get the username. I want to find out when was the user created. What is the account status? these are just to name three things. What is the username? When was the user created? And what is the account status? Account status could be account is open, account is locked, account is expired, account is locked and expired, or account does not exist. So our goal is to find out if there is a user called M1. If I have to find out the information, there is a user who just called me, he's a developer, I have never seen him before. He said, hey, my account is locked. Well, before I jump onto the server, I will say, hey, what is your account name? What is your account? And he's giving an account name. I have never seen that account. If I want to figure out if that account does exist as a DBA, I'm going to look into describe DB_users, and then I'm going to write my query based on that. So here, I will say describe DB_users. I have a bunch of these things in here. Now once I have this, I can start building my select statement. Select, what do you want to select? Username, account status, when was the account created, from DB_users, where username equal to M1. Now remember, every single object inside the database, including the username, the table names, the views, roles, everything is automatically capitalized, right? So regardless of how you are creating a table, if you are creating a table called student with all small letters, it will actually get converted to caps. So similarly, when you are creating a user, even if you are creating a user with all small letters, it will automatically get converted to caps. So whenever you are looking for any user, make sure the where clause has the username in caps, otherwise you will not get it. So for example, if I just say M1, and let's see if I can get some output from this queue. No, but if I change this to capital M, it should give me the username. So here I'm going to say set or column username format A10, column count status format A16 or A20, and then let's try this one more time. So username M1 is the account status is open and the user is created on this particular day.
What happens if you use like?
Well, like means, and then it is going to pick up anything. If you want to pick up all the users, that starts with M, for example. Then I will use like M percentage, and then I'm going to close it. And then I will say order by the username. So let's see what happens if I do that. So there are about 15 rows that match. So set page size, the M1 user, M2 user, and all the different users. Some of these users are actually expired as well as the lock. Well, what I want to do now is, I was just testing the M1. Now what I want to do is, I want to lock this user. To lock a user, anytime you are altering a user, for example, you are changing a password. if you're locking a user. You're not locking a user, you're actually altering the user now. So to lock a user, you will say alter user username, the way we say or alter user username, and then identified by new password if you want to change the password. If you want to lock a user, alter user username lock. To unlock a user, alter user username unlock. So let's try this now. I want to lock my user, the one that I just created. Alter user M1 account lock. So if I try this now, and then if I re-execute the same query, M1 is locked. So can M1 try account is locked? To unlock a user, alter user M1 account unlock. Let's try this. Alright, let's try the status again. M1 is open, and I want to be more precise. Account is open. Now let's try if the user can connect. Yes, the user can connect. I'm going to exit out, and then I will say expire the user now. Alter user M1 account expire. Now what is the difference between lock and expire?
Expired to be.
Account expired with B. Sorry?
D at the end of it. Expired.
I think there is, I remember having password expire. Alter user username, password expire. So here, so the same password the user cannot use. So the user will be prompted to change the password. So by default, let's say you are creating a one-time user password. You'll say, hey, you developer just logged in. The first time I'm giving you a default password for password. 2, 3, 4. If you have to do this from your side, then this is how you do it. So the new now you are creating a one-time password. At the same time, you want the user to change. Okay. So we know how to lock the password. We know how to unlock the password. We know how to create the user. We know how to drop the user. We know how to change the password. you know how to expire the password. A junior DBA, one of the interview question is, what is the difference between locking an account versus expiring a password? Right? With the expiring a password, you are forcing the user to change the password. Versus when you are locking the user, you are locking the user because of certain maintenance or because of few other reasons. User cannot unlock it unless and until you lock it. To do a quick Google with my name, user management, Oracle user management, I think. I have some of these. Mine was on Oracle user management. I don't know how much do I have. This is not the document that I was thinking. But you know, as part of your homework and classwork, you will get that. So any questions on these? No questions?
Not yet, yeah.
Okay. So it's fairly simple, right? You alter, you drop. You grant, you revoke. So far the keywords that we are saying, it could be anything. Create. We know how to drop. We know how to alter. We know how to grant. And we know how to revoke. Okay. Are we okay so far? Alright, so let's take a quick look. Can we turn on the lights, please? So let's create a scenario. I can erase this, right?
Yeah.
Let's say I have 4 or 5 different users that I want to create. So you are a DBA, and then this DBA, you're working on a new project, and you said, as a DBA, I need to hire about at least 4 developers. And one developer is going to be the lead developer, and I am pretty much going to look into the database aspect, but they are the one who is going to code. So here, we just hired a DBA. And he owns a database here. Let's say ACCT account database. Now, to make this into a production, right now this is still in the testing phase or in the development phase. We want to send this to a new one, which is, let's say, the testing phase. Before I test out everything and then everything is all good, then we are going to put this into the production. This is our goal, right? This is our task. This is the project that I'm currently working on. So I have the database admin, database administrator created this database, and he said, we want to hire few developers. So I have the lead dev. Lead dev has access to the database. Lead dev also has few other developers. Dev 1, Dev 2, and then Dev 3. Now this is what our goal is. Right now the only person that the account has is the DBA. So what is the very first thing the DBA should do now? Can the lead dev log into the database without the account? So do you think that a DBA should create his account first? Okay. So the DBA is going to run this command. So SQL plus / as sysdba. And I will simply say create user lead dev identified by ABC 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now we also want to grant certain permissions, and what the DBA has done is DBA said we'll just wait for the permissions. We'll not grant anything right now. I just created this user. Then he's also going to create 3 more users because we know at one point we want to create all these users. He wants to keep the same password, and he wants the user to change the password immediately. So do you think he should do create user lead dev identified by ABC 4 times, and every time he should change the username? So 4 different executions, and then later on expire the password. Remember, the very first time the user needs to log in, whenever the user is logging into the database, the user should be prompted to change the password as well. Okay? So I have 2 options. I can say create user dev1 identified by this password. Then I'll say create user dev2 identified by this password, and then create user dev3 identified by this password. Now, do you all agree that this is what the DBA should be doing? First of all, do you think this is a good option? Is this an option?
It is an option.
It is an option.
Yes.
But instead of that, maybe I can say, hey, you know what, I have to repeat the same SQL 3 or 4 times. So maybe what I will do here is, first of all, if I just do this, it will not force the user to change the password, does it? So can I say, instead of doing it here, I will say expire password. This will force this user to change the password, correct? Now I have to repeat the same thing 4 times, but instead of repeating the 4 times, maybe I can use the ampersand. Remember the and sign, and it will start prompting me. Remember when we inserted the rows? So can I perhaps use something like this? Create user and username. Right? So that I can just re-execute this, and then it will start prompting me what is the username. And then I'll say create user username identified by ABC 1, 2, 3, and then I will say expire password.
Password expire.
Is that password expire?
Yeah.
Password expire. So it will, as soon as I hit the enter key here, it will prompt me for the first user. I'll say lead dev. Then I'll say / again. It will prompt me for the second user. Then I'll say / again. It will prompt me for the third user. And then I said dev3. And then I'll re-execute the same thing, and it will prompt me for the 4th user. Now, it's up to you. You can go the longer route, or you can take the quicker route and then complete something like this. Now this has just created the users, but it has not granted the permissions. Do you all agree? Can any of these 4 users connect to the database?
No, no.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Okay. What kind of permission do you think we should be giving to all these users?
Third search.
What kind of permission we should be giving to all these users? Same permissions, or do you think there are certain different permissions that we should?
Different permissions.
Why different?
Because the lead dev has to have more permissions than the dev one.
Okay, so because this is one of the guy who will say, hey, he's managing all this, so maybe I can perhaps give him certain few more permissions.
Yes.
But before I even look into that option, I will probably have a call with the lead developer, and I'll say, hey, what kind of permissions are you seeking for your team? Because right now you have about the team of 3 developers. You may end up, by the end of this project, you may end up having tens of these. So we need to start making a standard way of providing the permissions. So what kind of permissions? First of all, if I have SQL plus /accessDBA, So remember, we are creating a new user called lead dev, and then start granting the permission. So what kind of permission are we talking about?
Connect with the
Create
first
table, create session.
Create session.
Create session.
Okay, so here we'll say create session, and then I'll say create table, create trigger. These are the developers. Create type, create index, create cluster, and then create operator. What else are we missing?
Procedure.
Sorry?
Procedure.
Cluster, we already did that.
Procedure.
Procedure. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I have one permission to lead dev. Alright? So I have this set of permission that I'm going to. So now I said, okay, hey, lead dev, these are the permissions that you want. Are you sure? He said yes. Are we giving the same kind of permissions? Yes.
Can we, instead of writing all these, can we write create resources?
Right.
Because
But
we're giving
We
all
are
the
coming to that.
But we don't have to give all of them, right? To lead dev.
Well, I'm just talking to him and I'm asking him what kind of permission. He has no idea that there is a role called resource creator by Oracle. So he is individually counting all these permissions so that I can start assigning to the users. So here I said, you want the create session, obviously every user will have to have this. So not just lead dev, but these are certain permissions that I should assign to all these users. Is that right? Now I'm thinking that every time a new user, a new developer is coming into the company, I have to start assigning all these to that user. So maybe perhaps I can look into what are the roles that are being created for these permissions. So a role is called connect. This is already created by Oracle. So this connect role already has create session permission. Then I have another set of permissions that are assigned to resource. So resource has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So instead of going this route, maybe perhaps I can say grant connect resource to lead dev, dev 1, dev 2, dev 3. Later on in the future, if there are ever a user that you are creating, so you are saying create user dev 4 identified by password, and then we are going to say grant connect resource to dev 4. I don't have to individually count each and every permission because that permission is already being assigned to a role.
But the scenario is that lead DBA assigned the dev 1, dev 2, dev 3, is it not?
I have not given him the permission yet. I want to keep the permissions to DBA. Then he calls me back again. He said, you know what, there are a few other permissions that I think I'm lacking. We want to have 4 more set of permissions. Those permissions are create role. All my developers should be able to create role. Okay. All my developers should be able to create synonym all my developers should be able to create sequences. And all my developers should be able to create views. Now, can I say this is a system generated view or system generated role?
Yes.
Right? This role is already there. Oracle has already created a role called connect. Every time you are assigning connect to anyone, then they already have the create session permission. This is also a system generated. Is that right? Okay. Now maybe what I can do is I can say I'm going to use all of these and I'm going to create a role called a role. You can name the role any role. But I usually like to start using the word role underscore and then the name of the role. So here I'll just use RSSV. So role RSSV. Now what the user is saying is, remember the lead developer, he's saying that what kind of permission that every developer should have. They should have connect, they should have resource, and then role RSSV. Can I not just say grant connect, comma resource, comma role RSSV to all these users, and then the future users as well? Grant connect, comma resource, comma role RSSV to lead dev, comma dev1, comma dev2, comma dev3. If I ever want to revoke a role, I will just say revoke one or more of these roles from these users. So far, okay?
How do you create all this roles, synonym, sequence, views in the whole this role RSS?
Now, we already know how to create a synonym,
Mhm.
right? We talked about it. What is a synonym?
It's like copy.
I'm sorry, what is it?
Like copy to a
It's
table.
a shortcut.
Shortcut.
Right? If I have a really lengthy table name, right? Students of 5th grade. I have actually seen a table like that, students of 5th grade. Now every time I have to point that table, it's a very lengthy name for me. So maybe I'll just say S5. Create a synonym S5 for this table. So that's a shortcut. What is a sequence? It is an auto-generated number, remember? The next time it should automatically start picking up the number instead of you assigning an ID, student ID or any ID. You already know what is a view. What is a view? It is a portion. It is a portion of the table, right? So you're just saying I'm going to see only the department 10 into a view called D10. Now we know what is a role, but how do you actually create a role? So if I have to create a role called role RSSV, again, the way we create a table, the way we create a user, create user username, create view name, create table name. Same way, create role name. So here I will have to say create role RSSV to create a role. And then an empty role will be created, and then you will start assigning. You will say grant create role, create synonym, create sequence, create view to role RSSV. So in a sequence, if I have to create this whole situation, right, if I have to write this, I know there are going to be all these users. So the very first thing, this is how I think I'm going to start. As a sysdba, I'm going to log in as sysdba, and then I'll create user ampersand username identified by ABC 123 password expired. And I'm going to re-execute this 1 time, 2, 3, and then 4. So the first one is lead dev. The second one is dev 1, dev 2, and then dev 3. Then I already know the connect and resource is already there, so I'm going to create a new role now. Create role RSS view. And I will say grant create role. This is my first permission for R. Create synonym for S. Create sequence. And then create view to role RSS.
Should we grant first to create all this stuff and then to create the role?
Create what stuff?
Should we first maybe grant, create role, synonym, and then?
No, I'm granting all this to role RSSV, which is, in order for me to do that, I have to create that role first.
Yeah, got it.
Right?
Sorry.
Once I'm done with that, then I will say grant. What are the permissions that we need? Connect. Right? Connect has 1 permission. And then I will say resource. Resource has bunch of permissions. And then role RSSV. It has 4 permissions. 2 lead dev, because this user is already being created. Dev 1, dev 2, and then dev 3. Now, as a DBA, there may be a few users who are curious. Maybe the lead developer is curious because he has never heard of something called resource. So he wants to find out what exactly, you have assigned me a role which is called a resource. What exactly a role called resource has? Now, how can you actually answer that person? Because one role is not just limited to 4 or 5 or 10 permissions. You can have a user role, and that role has hundreds of permissions. That role may have some sub-roles, though that role may have some other roles. So how can you actually extract, if the question is, how can you find out a resource has what kind of permissions? Now, can I say, in order for me, all these permissions, remember we talked about all these permissions are already pre-created?
Yes.
Right? Those are called what? System level permissions?
Yes.
Right? So there is a dictionary to pull this information from, and that is called DBA underscore system privileges. DBA underscore sys underscore privs. So any role. So if I want to find out this role RSSV, what kind of permissions that this role has, which dictionary are we going to look at? DBA underscore sys underscore privs, where grantee is equal to this. I'm going to pull that information in a few minutes. I have to look at the same thing in here. What kind of permission? You are saying Connect has only one permission, but are you sure Connect may have few other permissions that we do not know? I want to find out what kind of permission that the role called Connect has. If I want to do that, then I'm going to look into db underscore sys underscore privs. This is a very important interview question. They may ask you, how can you pull all the privileges that a role has? Okay, so can I erase this side here and then we can start pulling that information from the dictionary? Can we turn off the lights, please? Yeah. Right. So here, describe db underscore sys underscore privs. So I'm gonna, in the meantime, I'm gonna create a role, create role RSSV. Okay, so it looks like someone already created this. How do you drop a role? Drop role RSSV. This is how you drop a role. So create role RSSV. Then you say grant create view or create role, create sequence, create synonym, create view to role RSSV. Now, how can I actually pull the information about what is there in role RSSV? For that, I'm going to take the help of sysprivs. Now, out of these, it looks like there is only 1, 2, grantee, and what kind of privilege? So, can I not just say select grantee and then what kind of privilege that grantee has from, let me just create this first. And then I'm assigning these 4 permissions. Okay, and then I'll say privilege from db underscore sysprivs where grantee equal to role RSSV. And then I can remember I can use the break on grantee. So role RSSV has, so the name of the role becomes the grantee, who we are granting this permission. So I have granted all these permissions to this role. I have granted all this permission to the grantee called role RSSV. I have granted, or the Oracle has granted all this one or more permissions to a grantee called connect. So what we are doing is we are just using the where clause to limit the things that we are pulling from the dictionary. So here I'm going to revoke one of the permissions. So I will say revoke create view from role RSSV, and then we'll try this one more time. Remember we are getting 4 here. I'm going to revoke this now, and then if I re-execute the same thing again, create view is gone. Why? Because we have revoked it from that grantee, which is the role. I'm going to add this one more time, and then we'll try this again. So we'll say grant create view to role RSSV, and then we'll try this one more time. So create view is back in the list. I'm going to try the same thing for resource. Create table, operator, type, cluster, trigger, index, procedure, and sequence. Let's try the same one with the connect now. So I'm going to try connect. Connect has set container and then create session. Now I want to combine all these 3 guys together. Do you think I can do that?
Yes.
Using is equal to or in?
In.
So here in, and I will say connect resource and role RSSV, and I will say order by grantee as well as the privilege. What happened here? Okay, so we need to set line size. Set line size to 100. Set page size to 100. Column grantee format 820. Column privilege format 820. Let's try this one more time. There you go. And then we can also say skip one line. So break on grantee, skip one. So from here, I know the connect has these 2. This is the new feature, create or set container, starting from 12C. It was not there in 11G. Resource has these permissions, and then this new role has this permission. Now if I revoke this, then this dictionary is also updated. Then the permission will be removed from here. If I want to add a new permission, grant something to role RSSV, then it will start popping up here. Now this is how you extract the permissions from the roles. Okay? Now instead of the roles, if I want to find out what are the permissions that are given to a user called Scott, do you think the same DVSS privs can be used to extract the permissions that are given to a user Scott? Well, we can try. Let's see. Instead of giving all this, I'm just going to try Scott. Scott has, if it is looking for individual permissions, I'm not pulling the permissions that are from a role that is assigned to Scott. What are the individual permissions that are assigned to Scott? then these are the individual permissions that are assigned to Spark. Create role, create sequence, create synonym, create view, and then unlimited table space has been granted to Spark. Can you try with your username and see if you can pull out what are the permissions that are given to you? Okay, so I'm going to try using the same thing, but this time I know I'm going to repeat this. I will just use ampersand username, and then it will prompt you for the username. No row. Then I think I have mode 1, nothing. Mode 2. Mode 2 has these many permissions. I'm going to grant myself grant drop any table to mode 2. Alright, let me see if I can get the same thing. A new permission. Now I'm not a DBA yet. I'm just logging in as Moid 2, but I have given one of the most superpower permission to a user called Moid 2. What is that permission? Drop any table. Now if a user log in with this username, then he has the permission to drop any table from any schema in your database. As soon as I find that out, can I not simply revoke this? I will just say revoke. Revoke drop any table from if I execute this again, drop any table has been removed. Any questions on this so far?
So, if you have the permission for drop any table, that means you can do it even if you're not the proprietor of the table.
Right. It is one of the super permission that you are assigning to a user. The same way you can say grant alter any table. Then regardless if you are an owner or you are not an owner, you should be able to alter a table.
I have a question. I didn't get the result, so it's telling me no row selected.
Are you using the username in all caps? Remember the name that every time it is asking you the table name, the view name, any object name inside the database. Regardless of if you have used it as small case or mixed case, PLSQL procedure will convert it to an uppercase. So when you are pulling the data, you have to make sure that you are always using caps. Now, before I step into the next level of permissions, I want you to take about 5-10 minutes of your time, and I want you to write down of what you think of so far. What are some of the keywords that we have talked about, and then what is the main dictionary table, or two main dictionary tables, I should say. One is the DB_users, which will help you identify the users and the information about the users. If the user is locked, expired, open and all that. And then the second dictionary, which is the DB underscore sys underscore privs. What are the system level permissions? How we can, what is the difference between the grantee and then the privilege? Okay, so let's take about 5 to 10 minutes of your time. I want you to take your notes in your notepad, in your notebook, anywhere. Yes.
For about the grantee. Here we have the grantee as a user and we have the grantee as a whole. Like on the last request we did.
Correct. So here, the grantee can be a user or it can be a role. A user can be a grantee which has certain system level permission. A role is a grantee which has certain system level permissions. So any other questions from this? Is it pretty clear that how we can extract the permissions from a role? Right? Now let me ask you this. There may be some users who are curious about, you have created this, guys, this is important, okay? There may be certain users or your management or your security audit guys, they will come, they will say, hey, role RSSV is a very powerful role because it is allowing users to create a role. It is allowing users to create a view, sequence and all that. So I understand that this is pretty generic and this should be given to all users. But how many users actually has the role called role RSSV? How can we filter that information out? Now the question is, how many users has a role called resource? It's a fairly general question, right? They may ask you, hey, you have a bunch of these permissions assigned to this role, but how many users has this role? How many users has this role? How many users has this role? So if I want to extract the permission, I understand that I am using dba_sys_prefs. If I want to extract the information directly from the roles, then I will use dba_role_prefs. Okay. So if I want to find out how many users has been granted a role, then I will have to start looking into the dictionary called db_role_prefs. The difference is here, these are the system privileges. Here, there are the role, the privileges that are assigned to the role. So here, I'm going to describe, so I'm going to clear the screen, and I will say, describe db_role_prefs. So I have grantee and granted role. So here I will say, okay, select what is the granted role and who are the grantees.
We cannot see your screen.
You can see the screen.
Okay, so I have the select granted role. What is the role that has been granted? So in our case, the role that I want to look into is the resource. How many people, how many users, how many schemas has this role called resource? So what is the role name and who is the grantee? From db_role_prefs, where granted role is equal to resource. Alright, and I'm going to set line size 200, set page size 200, break column granted role format A15, column grantee format A30, and break on granted role. So I have written this SQL. I'm going to execute this, and then I'll say maybe order by the username, order by the grantee. Looks like all these users has the role called resource assigned to them. So here, if this is our database, my database has users. If I want to find out what are the resources that are available to the user, I will use db underscore role underscore privileges. It will give me the resource, the role names, and then if I want to find out what are the resources that are available, what are the permissions that are available to that particular role, then I will start looking into this. So dba underscore users, from the db underscore users I can extract the users information. From db underscore role underscore privs I can extract the role information. From db underscore sys underscore privs I can extract the individual permissions from it. So let me see if I can, I know I created a user called M1 or M2, right? What was that, M1? Okay, so I created the user M1. I am going to, I have created the role, but I don't think I have assigned to anyone, so I'm going to assign the role RSSV to that user. So here I will say grant role RSSV to M1. But before I actually do that, let me actually find out how many people has the role RSSV now. Only sys, because I'm the owner, I created it, it has assigned the permission to myself. I'm going to assign this to a user called M1. Alright, I'm going to try this one more time now. I'm going to assign this to Scott now. Grant role RSSV to Scott. And I'm going to try this one more time. So from here, I'm able to pick up what user has what role from here. This is the granted role, this is the grantee. Here, if I have to do the reverse, where I'm saying, hey, don't worry about the users, I'm only looking into the individual level permissions inside, which is granted to either a role or a user, then I'm going to start looking into here. Now let's find out, we know that this is a very basic permission that should be assigned to any user. Now I want to find out, I want to audit all my users. Maybe there are certain users that are created but they were never given the connect permission. So can I just use the similar query where I say is not equal to create session or which is not equal to connect, and then it should be able to give me all the users who are not given the connect permission. So here I will use the same query and I will say is not connect. These are all the users. They do not have, wait, granted role is not connect. So these are all the users who has the other permissions, but they do not have the connect role. So if they do not have the connect role permission, so they may have the create session permission. So they are not going with the roles now, they are actually going with the individual permissions. So when auditors come, these are certain things that they are going to look for. They are looking into the DB assist privs, and then the DB role privs, and then there is something called DB underscore tab underscore privs, which will give you the permissions on individual table level. The way we have the user level, the way we have the role level, the way we have the individual permission. Same way, what are the permissions that are granted to a table? Who can read, who can write, who can alter, who can drop, who can update, all these different permissions that we should be able to pick it up from DBA underscore tab underscore privs. So if I have an object inside it, if I want to find out the permissions for that object, Then I have DBA underscore tab, which stands for table underscore prefs. Now these permissions are who has the select, who can read, who has the delete, who has the insert, and who has the update. Now by default, owner has all four, but maybe there are certain other users. So if owner is a Scott and he has the table called EMP, he by default has all these permissions, but he may just give a read-only permission to John. So for that, if I want to find out what kind of permissions does any owner has on a table which is owned by Scott, and then the table name is called EMP, then the third magic dictionary table is db underscore tab underscore prefs. These are the main three things when we are talking about permission. One, two, no, these are the main three about the permission. Now they all are dependent on the DBA users. So this is the main. If you don't have this, then you are not worried about the permissions. Very important three dictionaries that every DBA should know. Okay. When we come back after Zuhar prayer, then we will start looking into the DBA tab underscore prefs. Let's take a break. anyone who has a DBA level permission, they are getting all these permissions. So if I create a new user called Mohit, then I don't have to assign any information. I'll just say grant DBA to Mohit, and it is going to come, and it will come with many different permissions. So user 100 has a DBA, and DBA has bunch of individual level permissions. So I can administer any of these. I can create SQL tuning sets, create any cluster, create any cube, create any indexes, all the different development efforts. And I'm going to go down, and these are the individual permission, and it looks like there is a role called data pump export full database. That role has create session, create table, and then export full table with all bunch of these. This is another role. Then you will have to start looking into all of these. So anyone who has a DBA role, they can drop any role, they can drop any synonym, they can drop any table. This is the reason that as a DBA, if I ever log in as sys, I should be able to start browsing around in any schema that I like, because I have the super privilege. Now if I say drop this user, drop user 100, if I come back, re-execute this, all those permissions are gone. Okay, so
This query, where did we get it from?
if you just type in my name, roles given to a user. What roles and privileges are given to a user? So if you click on that one, and then this is the document where you can find this SQL. This is a very powerful query. Instead of you picking up and start looking into any of these, just plug in the username that you are looking for. It will bring up all the permission that particular user has. Okay, so far? So here is this is the exact queue. Three major dictionaries that it is pulling it from: DB underscore users, DB underscore role underscore prefs, and DB underscore sys prefs. And it is combining all of these using the union. Okay. Can I erase this side here? Now, we have another situation here now. The other situation is DBA has a lot of work on his hand and he does not want to be bothered for bunch of roles and grants and permissions every time people need something, then they are contacting the DBA. So DBA is saying that, hey, you know what? I am going to give certain permissions to the lead developer. So any developer, before contacting me for the permission, contact the lead developer, because he or she might be able to just assign the permission to you instead of me assigning the permission. So what we are doing is we are actually authorizing a lead developer to grant the permission, so forward the permission that is assigned to them to someone else. For example, here the DBA will say create user lead dev identified by ABC 1, 2, 3. And now I will say grant connect resource to lead dev. Now this is the permission. The DBA is not authorizing lead developer to create another user. To create another user, it will have to go through, because of the security policy, it will have to go through the DBA. And then he's saying that I'm going to grant create role, create resource, or create synonym or sequence, create synonym, and then create view to lead dev. Now why are we not just saying that we already have a role? Remember, we have a role called role RSSV. So I should have just granted the role RSSV to lead dev. But instead of doing that, what I'm doing is I'll say here with admin option. Now the lead dev is becoming an admin. So what he can do now is, if there is a developer here, so I have dev1. Now remember last time who was assigning the permission to dev1? DBA. Next time, if dev1 requires a permission because he wants to create a view, should he be contacting the DBA or should he be contacting the lead dev? Lead dev now. So now lead dev is going to log in SQL plus lead dev ABC 1, 2, 3. On the SQL plus prompt, he will say grant create view to dev1. Why? Because he has inherited these permissions with the admin option. So if a user wants, if the DBA wants to, and let's say if lead dev is going on vacation now, and he's saying the lead dev1, you are going to become an admin now. So right before he leaves, what is the command that he should give to dev1? So let's say this guy is going on vacation, right? So he's no longer available now. But do you think he has all these 4 permissions? Can he forward that to dev1?
Yes.
Yes. What is the command? Now he will have to say grant all of these, create role, create view, create sequence, create synonym, right? To dev1 with admin option. Now he can forward that to dev2, dev3, and then dev4. Now let's say later on they hired a new guy, dev5. Can dev2 provide this permission to dev5 now?
Yes. Yeah.
Dev2 can do that?
Yeah. If dev1 give permission to dev2, then
So if dev1, if he has to give a permission to dev2, what is the command that they are going to give?
same thing.
Admin permission.
Let's just say dev2 only wants to create a view. So he's asking, he thought of asking DBA, DBA is not answering the phone. He thought of calling the lead dev is not available. So he called the dev1 and hey, I need to create a view, but I am not authorized to do that. Can dev1 provide a grant to dev2 to
Yes.
just create a view?
Yeah.
What is the command?
Great.
Create view to dev2. So now dev2 is happy now. Dev5 came in. This is his first day. He wants to create a view. He does not know how the hierarchy is. So he's a good friend of dev2. So he picked up the phone and called dev2 and say, hey, you know what? I'm trying to create a view. Can I do that?
No.
Who can provide the permission?
Dev1.
Only dev1 can do that. If dev2 is going to try grant something, then it will be erroring.
It doesn't have admin options.
Exactly. So anyone who has the admin option, they can forward whatever the permissions that are granted to them to someone else. If they do not have with admin option, then it is only restricted to them. It cannot be forwarded to someone else. So all the permissions. So Oracle has created some permissions and roles. So Oracle has bunch of system level permissions. These system level permissions are sometimes granted to roles. Right? These roles can be granted to a user. System level permissions can also be granted to users. System level permissions are DBA _ sys _ privs. Roles, on the other hand, is DBA _ roles _ priv. I think it's role, not roles. Right? System level permissions can be granted to a user, or it can be granted to a user with admin option. If it is being granted with admin option, then the same can be forwarded forward to other user. Now, if this user is forwarding with admin option, then this user can also forward the same thing to the other users. If this user is again forwarding the connection with admin option, then he has the full authority to forward that connection to someone else, or forward that permission to someone else. A good question would be, what happens if there are a lot of forwarding of these permission to someone else? Let's say if this user is being dropped, do you think the permission that he has granted to the other users, are they still intact?
Yes.
Or will
Yes.
they also be removed? This is something that I want you to test it out.
If you do cascade.
I want you to, yes, I want you to test it out and find out if whenever you're creating multiple users and you're forwarding, so maybe you want to create a user called John. So Scott is giving certain permission to John. So sys is giving permissions to Scott. Scott is forwarding to John. John is forwarding to Tom. And then John is dropped. Will the Tom still has the permission that was assigned to him by John, or will he not? You were asking something? Was that you?
I was gonna ask you about the cascade.
Test it.
You want us to do it now?
Oh. So create multiple users. Don't just start creating all Scott, all Tom, all John, right? You're gonna drop each other. So just pick a unique name. Maybe your childhood name would be a good one.
That's what I'm saying, it won't go. That's what I'm saying, it won't go. कोई फोन करेगा
नहीं जाएगा रूल्स जो दे दिए वो दे दिए नहीं जाएगा मैं चेक किया क्या अगर आप सिंपल करेंगे ड्रॉप कल्चर करें मैंने आपको दे दिए पैसे ये चीज़ दे दी चलो मैं कैसे हाँ तो नहीं अगर मैंने आपको अब मेरे से मैं चल छोड़ but cascade is something different by cascade की बात नहीं तो भाई क्या cascade से
What he said is
अभी जो simple example नहीं
रहेगा
वो अपने टाइम
I know, because you already have the different problems. No, what I'm asking you is, why are you using the duplex? You should ask them, hey, are these objects of XST, G, gravity, IST? What do you want to replace it? What do you want to replace? It's not living. Why are you using just okay, show that to this is only one case. एक क्वेश्चन है आप जाओ पैरामीटर के अंदर रिमोट एक्सक्लूसिव इसमें दो ऑप्शन है जाओ अपने इनसे डायरेक्ट जाओ जिससे जाकर दिखाता है कि वो जो रिमोट पैरामीटर एक्सक्लूसिव है So, you must have exclusive. Can I run this? It's easier if you use the log file, right? So that you can watch so that we can analyze if it is going fast. It's easy for us to which is fine. Exactly. Just think about This is your source. He's saying this from the source. So this table is going to come here. Right? And if we start looking for the table A is not there. So we can which is okay. Why? Because in this table, he doesn't ask you to get these tables. So whenever you are importing just one table, then this you do the same thing in your own schema. So let's say you create a schema. Source has this table. This is the table that you have extracted. Okay, so the table came in. Source also has
Просто там вместо сколько слоев.
But when you export it, you only export it this table. You have not exported whoever. But when you are importing, when you are importing, you are only importing this table. This table is trying to build the constraints. Think about it. This is the .dmp file.
Yes.
This is .dmp. From this .dmp, you are exporting, you are holding only one table, which is this one. For example, let's just say you are, in this case, you are only exporting one table. So you are only, let's just talk about this and then we'll come back. You are exporting only one table. Right? So when you export this table, any dependencies that it has, it is trying to link it, but those tables are not available. So it is throwing the error.
And in this case, okay, importing just one table.
So now it will do the same thing one more time. This time I want to actually log so that
И через индивидуально вот это, да? Тогда и я через привилегию взял, он же может пока не давать. Я должен это проверить. Поэтому я и взял. Я дарил, где я дал вот один я не удалил, дальше есть все. Просто мне кажется, там есть еще дата, там еще это маленькие остаются разные функции.
И то есть, если ты первый раз опять юзер секс, то автоматически получится.
Может быть, я не знаю, надо спросить. Помнишь, когда мы делали? На сайте купили, да. То же самое, надо спросить. В чем разница между дроп с каскети и дроп без каскети?
So no privilege on table space development. Not able to do that because there is no privilege on table space for development. So where exactly is the other layers? So this will where exactly?
एरर ही नहीं पड़ा अब आप अपने यूजर से भी जा सकते हैं, सिस से भी जा सकते हैं।
मतलब पहली दफा में पहले आप इस तरह
नहीं, आपको ये कमांड
ये पूरी
पासवर्ड मैंने आपको दूसरी चीज बताई
हाँ
वो भी चेक
मतलब शो पैरामीटर्स
That's experience.
No, I dropped the sessions DB so and I make it one for moving sound and one I dropped the one who gave
Connect as a session.
the second one.
Mesmo what the break stand. This
So let's do one at a time. So are you talking about
On your side, when you look into the
The table is so all the data is now, but there is no constraints. So here what you can see there are no grams. Next you want to triggers if they need to, they can create. But not in SQL. I guess it's different. I mean, it's very easy in SQL. They have to go in SQL and
In
yeah.
Unix. In Unix.
So there are the data objects. You have the exclude.
Yeah, I mean, you go
So
on,
exclude
you go in like this, but and you go into SQL and then you just create up there. I mean, but he never taught us that.
He has this lesson.
I think it was going to the one or something. It was optional. So I would take it for what? I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Because I remember
Yeah.
home.
So you didn't do this? Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunate. Because you have to get the whole log and then log up. Log up, get everything saved. And you would have to get it saved. Yeah, like if you have it, like whatever we were doing, creating all the tables, we wanted to save it.
How are you?
For
Still out, right?
And then, like, you know how they do it.
Same thing. You? Good, man.
People go away. Yeah, that's good. Send it to everybody else.
Another week. 2 weeks. I don't even know how many weeks
I
been since I
think what they want is like do it in SQL, and then do the script off, and then he will save everything. Yes, so he will save everything. I think that's how they want it. I did that first, and then I kind of had to. I don't remember you teaching us. I don't know.
But I think you don't really have to worry about
Yeah, that's it. It's very simple. And it's like, I don't know. The thing is, to be honest, the rules are being information it was too confusing. That's what I meant. And then you get a couple times.
That's what I said.
It was just, I think that was just 3 plus. Yep, exactly. So, I don't know. I have no idea. Let's see. Because I thought maybe we were going to do it at the beginning of the class, but I guess.
See you next week. Tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. Next week. I thought it sounded already.
get to it.
What, we get to go? What?
Yeah,
Have a nice one.
You overcomplicated this shit. You're kind of it's so simple. Stuck in the server side, man. He has no time to really. The client side I got pretty much, and another one where you have to read the Oracle, the chapters.